Hello, welcome to the House of Wellness. I'm Luke Darcy, and it is great to be here as always with Joe Stanley, Jackie Felgate, Dr Nick Carr. G'day, guys.
Hi, guys.
Good to see you as always. It's one of the most talked about topics in education these days, and that is STEM, Joe. And the next 60 superstars of STEM have recently been announced, all women, which I know you'd be happy to hear.
Oh, it's an amazing program, actually getting more women into STEM. I'm very impressed with this lineup, and I can't even list them all, but I'll mention Dr Jacqueline Pearson, who works in infectious diseases. She's described as a microbiome mastermind, but there's another 59 incredibly inspirational women from a wide range of backgrounds who are all amazing role models for young women.
They certainly are, Joe, and I recently hosted a Women in STEM forum for secondary students. The girls coming through, they're just amazing, and it really makes me want to encourage my daughters into the science area too.
Fantastic advances are also happening in gender equality as well, Jack, and in the field of medicine. There's been a major Australian breakthrough in the critical area of heart health as well.
That's exactly right, Das. A team at Melbourne's Alfred Hospital has achieved what's considered to be the holy grail of cardiology. In a Victorian first, and one of only 50 such operations performed worldwide, a Melbourne grandmother had a leaky heart valve repaired without having open heart surgery. The leaky mitral valve was instead fixed using a unique device implanted via keyhole surgery. Dr Nick, I know you'll be thrilled about this.
It is actually extraordinary, Jack, because the heart has 4 valves and they stop the blood flowing the wrong way. And like a lot of things in the body, they do tend to wear out over time. We all know that one. And people with valve disease are often quite frail and unwell, so really aren't up to the gruelling open heart surgery to fix them. So, yes, Jack, this is absolutely revolutionary and it will save lives.
Just watched my father-in-law recover from open heart surgery in his early 80s, won't mind me saying. It's a seriously big operation, isn't it? So that's a huge breakthrough. The topic that also seems to be permanently on everyone's lips at the moment is wild weather. From flooding rains, hail, mini tornadoes. Last few months have been absolutely crazy.
Yes, absolutely crazy. And I must say, you think about the people who have had their houses flooded repeatedly, but also it really affects your mental health, don't you think? I feel like it just makes us flat, and it's sort of harder to get over sometimes that winter blues when it just keeps on coming.
I came all the way from England for the weather.
Sorry. Well, it's all because of La Nina, which brings above average spring and summer rain. And as we've experienced a whole lot more, and it looks like La Nina is going to stick around for a bit longer.
And we're all going through our 3rd one in a row, so it's no wonder that we're all absolutely over it. The barrage of extreme weather has wreaked havoc on people's homes and properties, and a problem that's growing quite literally as the waters recede is toxic mould.
And it's important to recognise that we live with mould spores around us all the time, and for most healthy people, they're not really necessarily much of a problem. But a lot of visible mould in the home, well, that can be potentially nasty because it can trigger sneezing, coughing, respiratory infections, and it can worsen asthma and allergic conditions.
I've heard sick people present to their GP who've been exposed to toxic mould and they didn't even know that it was there. Have you had any experience with that in your past?
Well, the ones I worry about, Jack, in my practice are those who are immunosuppressed, people on chemotherapy for cancer or people with HIV/AIDS. They're the ones for whom mould spores can be really nasty.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the big clean-up continues across the country, rising mould is infesting many properties with the potential to affect a lot of people's health. Here's naturopath Adrian Harper with more.
Mold biotoxin illness is a chronic illness that normally develops with an exposure to mold, normally from a water-damaged building, such as someone's home or office. It can range from things like fatigue, brain fog, difficulty with cognition, joint pain, inflammatory issues, muscle pain, frequent urination, and these tend to develop gradually over time and with prolonged exposure. It can kind of mimic often other types of illnesses as well, so it can be quite difficult to initially understand what's developing. A water-damaged building will be releasing mycotoxins into the environment, which you commonly can breathe in. You might ingest through the digestive tract, but you'll also find there's a whole range of other kind of volatile organic compounds. The longer the person is exposed to that environment, then the more likely they're going to get a mycotoxin load in their system. And then the higher the load, the longer the exposure, generally the more chronic the condition will be. Mould can cause sensitivity to other things like chemicals, foods. So it can be pretty common to see people having these reactions to other things, and often they're the things that are more obvious, so they might not even realise that there's an underlying mould issue that's causing that. I've seen some people that are affected mainly in just respiratory symptoms. They kind of manage without getting a lot of the multi-system illness, whereas other people I've seen essentially bedbound from years of mould exposure and really not being able to get out there and function in society at all. It is a difficult illness to treat, generally because you first of all need to establish that there is mould in the environment, and that might not always be evident. A lot of people that I see for consultations generally have been unwell for months or sometimes years before they really realise that maybe their environment is making them sick. In terms of preventing mould, the key things is preventing moisture in the environment, avoiding things like hanging washing inside, making sure that windows are open regularly so you're getting some ventilation. There's definitely a real issue with the floods that have occurred through New South Wales and Queensland. Particularly in those areas, there's also humidity that's often a problem as well. When a flood occurs, there's not an issue with mould then. It's normally, like 6 months down the track. So I think we're going to be seeing more and more as time progresses.
I mean, as if you haven't got enough to do after your house gets flooded, to then have to deal with the byproduct of that devastation that could affect your health, that is really tough.
We had a flooding event at our house and you had the full HAZCAM suits, and it is pretty disturbing to see that take place. And Adrian said that he goes through the patient's housing history. So if there's no visible evidence of mould, there may have been burst pipes, for example, at some point in the house, or water in the slab floor is an option as well.
And if you can't actually see or find the mould, you may need to get someone out to do an inspection with things like air sampling.
Residential cleaning job listings on Airtasker, including for water damage and mould, have doubled in the past month. So there you go. Some workers even say they need to wear a hazmat suit, as you say, Dar. So that's the sign of the times.
Yeah, who would have thought that mould would be that toxic? I guess it's only when you leave the house to go on a holiday and you start feeling a little better that you might twig that something's not quite right.
Yeah, good point, Jackie. From cleaning up to toning up, we look behind the curtain of Australian Ballet for a masterclass in fitness. That's next on the House of Wellness.
Now, I don't know if you know this about me, guys, but I absolutely love the ballet. I dreamed as a little girl of being able to do a pirouette or a plie. Unfortunately, I never did ballet myself, so I try, but I'm fairly average at it. It's just the most beautiful thing, and I love the Australian ballet. You have to admire them. They are so disciplined. I mean, they are athletes. Their fitness, their strength, yet they look so delicate and elegant, and, oh, my gosh, put me in a tutu and I'm happy. I love it.
I'm the complete opposite. I've got 2 left feet. I never got into it as a kid, and neither of my girls are ballet types. They love their basketball and their footy, but I do appreciate the skills that come with such dedication to their craft, and it is beautiful.
And the male dancers are literally some of the fittest people on the planet, and I reckon they give footy players a run for their money with that sort of strength and composure. It's quite remarkable. We actually had a couple of guys from the St Kilda Footy Club try out ballet, you'll remember, on the show, Joe.
Yes.
And they genuinely struggled, from my memory.
They really did. I don't even think they finished the class, actually, because it's a very different kind of fitness, Nick.
Well, yeah, because elite ballet dancers train incredibly hard for hours and hours every day, and that's how they make it look so easy. And it's because they're incredibly strong muscularly, and their cardio fitness is amazing, as well as their balance, their flexibility. They just have the all-round package.
Absolutely. And, ballet classes or hybrid workouts like Extend Bar that incorporate ballet elements have totally taken off. Have you done a bar class?
No,
oh my
and
gosh.
I'm not planning on it.
They are really hard, and you can sometimes pretend that you're a ballerina when you're doing it sometimes.
Well, even Pilates is a big part of ballet too.
Absolutely, it really is.
Yeah.
It is. But for the professionals, the real art is in making a punishing physical workout look downright dreamy.
It's one of the most beautiful and graceful art forms there is. But to make it as a professional ballet dancer, you have to have the mental and physical drive of any elite athlete. 6 days a week, members of the Australian Ballet pour blood, sweat and tears into making this gruelling profession look effortless on stage.
It is a lifestyle choice and it takes a lot of energy and a lot of time.
Dana Stevenson has been performing with the Australian Ballet for over 18 years, so she's no stranger to the intense daily demands of performance season.
It's all about managing your body to get through the day and then get to the show, because that's the cherry on top at the end of the day. I try to do a little bit of body conditioning in the morning or across the day, and then we have a daily class, which is either at 10:30 or 11. So that's our training. We're trying to hone our technique, work on some things, but also get going for the day, work through the soreness from the previous days, and also kind of get some of that nervous energy out of the body as well. Then we might rehearse for the current season or the next season, so that's often learning a new ballet. So that gets the brain going as well. And then we have a break in the afternoon. You might grab some lunch and then get back to the theatre to get ready for the evening show about 5:36, depending on my time.
Wow, I mean, it's a full-on day. Your body must take a little bit of a beating doing class and then doing performances. Are there any sort of specific differences in the sort of repertoire between the sort of more contemporary repertoire or the more classical repertoire? Do you have to train differently for that?
Yeah, the classical and contemporary repertoire pushes your body in really different ways. So they tend to use slightly different muscle groups. The contemporary work's a lot more grounded, sometimes a bit more ballistic, a bit more physical. The classical work can also have that, but it can also be a lot more about control, and especially if you're doing group work, there's a lot of precision with the group and staying in line. So it's a different kind of focus. And what's really tricky, but kind of a really great challenge here, is that we often are doing classical work at the same time as contemporary work.
With the body pushed to perform so many different tasks, it's no wonder that 80% of professional dancers experience at least one significant injury per season, compared with just 20% of football and rugby players. The Australian Ballet's rehab physiotherapist, Sophie Emery, is part of a crack team of health experts responsible for supporting dancers' recovery.
The most common area for injury is below the knee. So 50% of our injuries happen to the calf or the foot, and then it's normally followed by sort of the hip or the lower back. If unfortunately any injury does happen, then as a whole team we get around them. So physio, sports doctor, GP, psychologist, welfare development, strength and conditioning, and we get a really well-rounded program.
Watching Rowan Fennell leap around the studio, you'd have no idea he's suffered multiple nasty foot injuries.
In my first year, I had a stress fracture in a bone in my foot, which sort of had me out for a few months and which was quite a slow rehab. And then a few years ago, I sprained my deltoid ligament in my ankle, which was quite intense and had me on crutches for a few weeks. And very painful, but again, have been able to come back from all of those injuries. And I think injury is just a part of what we do. Taking time away from the demands of our career to rehab an injury allows you to learn a lot about your body, and I think you often come back stronger from injury.
Although some injuries are inevitable, over the past couple of decades, the Australian Ballet have become renowned for their remarkably low injury rate compared to other ballet companies.
So I think there's sort of a misconception that dancers need simple Pilates exercises or stretching to help support them, but what we've found is strengthening is so key, so that when they go into the studio, they have sufficient strength and muscular endurance, so they know that they can do what they need to do.
If you're doing 8 shows of Swan Lake a week, your feet are really taking a beating. So it's a bit of a combination of keeping the strength up in the feet, ice baths at night, physio treatment, rolling them out. You'll see us in between shows with our feet up in the air, just trying to, drain that blood out so that it's a bit more fresh for the evening show. The contemporary season, everyone's rolling out their muscles.
So, Sophie, I've heard that the Australian Ballet have a certain exercise that they've almost taken and used as their own that helps to prevent injuries to the ankle. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, so I think our trademark exercises become the single leg calf rise. So much so I think overseas they're called the Aussies. So basically it's just standing on one leg and doing slow, really well controlled single leg heel rises to your absolute maximum. And we expect our dancers to be able to do at least 25. And we've found it's significantly helped the number of lower leg injuries that we have. We've barely had any surgeries in the last 13 years, which is pretty exciting.
Back a very long time ago in my ballet days, there was not so much of a healthy mindset maybe about things like diet and just working hard all the time. And if you get injured, you have to push through. Is mental health an aspect that you concentrate on, or the Australian Ballet, do they have a team that work with the dancers for their mental health?
Absolutely. It's absolutely paramount that dancers have mental health support as well. So in recent years, we've employed someone specifically to help develop a program to help look after not only the mental health, but also facilitate some of that nutritional support that might be required. So we have a team of nutritionists and dietetics that we refer out to if they do need a bit of help and support or some advice. We also have a great partnership with a company that makes some ready-made meals. So if they're really time poor, which quite often they are, we've got some nutritionally balanced ready-made meals that they can grab and go.
Arguably the biggest mental and physical challenge of Dana's career has been returning to the demands of dancing since becoming a mother of 3.
After I had my son Jasper, I was 30 and I was ready to keep dancing again. It was quite a natural progression. It took 9 months to get back on stage, but it was pretty smooth, and I kind of didn't question much along the process. My body felt the same, so that I was very lucky. After I had my twin girls, that was a really different story. And I didn't expect to dance again. It's such a massive life change. But in the end, I started back just doing class just for my mental well-being more than anything, and just being around people I knew and just dancing to piano. And then it kind of developed from there. As a really busy mum now, I don't have 3 hours to do a session in the gym. I have 15 minutes here, I have 5 minutes here, and I just make the most of that. I rush into the gym and I do one exercise and I rush to rehearsal, and then I've got another break, so I rush in and do, and little bits across the day, they all add up.
Even though the sacrifices of being a dancer are significant, I think the privilege for me has been to know what it is to be a passionate person, to have something in my life that I am prepared to make a sacrifice for. I think is a really profound experience.
It's so rewarding going on stage every night, and for audiences to come and be transported to a different world and be blown away by how physical, how athletic we can be. It's a really beautiful way to spend my time. I'm very lucky to have this as a career.
According to the Australian Ballet website, the company of dancers go through 7,500 ballet shoes a year. Of those, 5,000 are point shoes. Can you believe that?
It is unbelievable. That's how much, like the mileage they're putting on those shoes. It's incredible. It's way more than I go through. Only just a smidge. But dancers train from the age of 11 or 12 to be able to go on point or on that tippy toe. That's supposed. And honestly, it's incredibly painful for them. And I wish I could do it. I really do.
As a doctor, it really makes me wince to see dancers en pointe, because our anatomy evolved to walk, run and dance on the soles of our feet. And when we make dancers go up on their toes, oh, ouch. And you'll note they don't actually ask the blokes to do it.
Yes, I have observed.
And you said that very well too. The Australian Ballet is currently performing Romeo and Juliet at the Sydney Opera House. It's on until December 21st, so there's still time to see a world-class performance.
I need to go and do that for sure. Hollywood shone a light on children of deaf adults with the Oscar-winning film Coda. Have you seen it, Jo?
I have. I loved this film.
Told it's brilliant. And up next, we meet Australia's real-life answers to the film right here on the House of Wellness. This year, we had the privilege to meet a group of families who are living with parents with a disability. 25 families shared their story in a book called We've Got This, which is a really powerful read, Jo.
I absolutely love the book, and I actually noticed that it's still on the shelf in my local bookshop if you're wanting to pick something up for Christmas. I reckon it's a good buy. The book came about because these stories are rarely shared, and it's so important that people feel supported by knowing there are others who are experiencing similar situations.
And actually 15% of the Australian households have a parent with a disability. And it brings its own challenges, but also its own special joys.
Exactly. As Dar said, we loved meeting the book's editor, Eliza Hull, and a couple of families who feature in its pages earlier this year. So we knocked on the Melbourne front door of the Phillips family for another chapter.
So when Taylor was born, the Victorian government had a newborn hearing screening program. So we knew that when she was 1 or 2 days old, the nurse would come to test her hearing. So she had the test and the nurse put out her hand and I could lip read her saying, "Congratulations." Mel and I looked at each other and we weren't too sure what that meant. Is she saying, "Congratulations, she's deaf like us?" Or she's saying, "Congratulations, your daughter's hearing"? So we just wanted to clarify. And then she said, "No, your daughter can hear." And that really impacted us because we didn't really care about the result itself, but we thought about what would happen for those parents who get a diagnosis that their child is deaf. Would the nurse say, "Oh, I'm sorry that your child is deaf"? It's that negative perspective. That really shows how the medical model really influences our society rather than the cultural and linguistic model. It's immediately, do you pass or do you fail? It's not about deafness and hearing and whether people have other language options.
Taylor and Nate, their first language was Auslan, which is our primary language. So they learnt to sign, and actually they could learn to sign before they could speak anyway, so that made things easier.
We did consider how they'd be able to develop both languages at the same time, but then we ultimately made a decision to just use Auslan in the home, and then naturally as they went to childcare or they played with their cousins or neighbours, their English would just improve and excel, and now they're fluent in both languages.
So I think it's great to know 2 different languages because at school we can use English and stuff, and at home we can communicate a different way, like we can use signing, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and we're the only ones in the school that our parents are deaf.
Yes, so when we read to our children, we sometimes would be in Auslan grammar and syntax, and then sometimes we'd sign word by word to make sure that it follows the English syntax and structure.
I think technology is really, it's made a big difference in our lives as parents. So this house is actually set up in a way that we don't have to rely on our kids. So we have a front doorbell that has visual alerts and alarms, as well as a fire alarm and a baby crying alarm. So we did have that back in the day, and we'd also have one with a camera so we could check in and see if the crying was anything to worry about.
Taylor and Nate's school previously had Italian being taught as a second language, but then the teachers decide to send a vote out to the parents to choose whether or not they change over to a different language to be taught. And the option was to still teach Italian or Chinese or Auslan, and there was a high percentage of votes leaning towards Auslan, and we felt really proud about that because that meant we could communicate with our kids' friends and we weren't seen as parents with a disability. We were seen as part of the community.
I think we're really proud that our children have our identity, language and culture ingrained within them, and it'll be there forever. They show the right attitude, they're not ashamed, they're not, really they just love the language, and they're very visual communicators. They enjoy being among deaf people, going to deaf events and being part of that world, and at the same time they really enjoy their hearing world. So there's a good balance there. Nate and I were watching football recently on TV, and the captions sometimes blocked the ball, so we agreed that we'd turn off the captions. So I switched them off, and then at the same time, Nate turned the volume down to 0. I looked over at him and said, "But now you can't understand." And he said, "Well, now we're equal." So we're watching the football without sound or captions. And that really impacted on me because I realised he understood what it meant to be deaf and he wanted us to have the same experience. So that was really beautiful.
You didn't tell me that.
It was last week.
Oh, lovely.
The deaf community is a really tight-knit group. They share a language and culture and also embrace hearing people connected to the community, like the kids of deaf parents.
And Auslan, or Australian Sign Language, is a really great skill to have. And it's a beautiful art form in itself. And it even has its own regional dialects. And it learns new words, just as we had to learn coronavirus. They had to learn that in Auslan. And it's the crown. Isn't that beautiful? Just like that. That's coronavirus.
You learn something
in
new every
Auslan.
day. Well, this year's Oscar winner for the best film was Coda, which stands for Children of Deaf Adults. It's a heartwarming look at experiences like the Phillips. I absolutely loved it. It's well worth checking out.
Not that often you get a recommendation like that from you, Joe. I look forward to seeing Coda. Haven't done that yet. Up next, Luke Hines is on a mission to find the best health hacks that sees him get zapped. Better Hinesy than me. That's next on the House of Wellness.
As an Olympian and an elite athlete, physical health was of course a huge focus, but mental well-being was of equal importance as well. Two factors that may impact our mental health are our ability to achieve quality sleep and our stress levels. For me, the key to getting a good night's sleep is to eat dinner at a relatively early time of the evening and making sure that I have plenty of downtime without screens before bed. And when it comes to stress, there's two things for me that always work. I love animals and being outside in nature. So I'm lucky that I've got dogs, horses, cattle to play with, as well as plenty of macadamia trees to roam around in. Mental well-being also has a connection to our gut, so maintaining good quality sleep and stressing less provides support to both. This includes eating a balanced diet and exercising regularly. We may also choose to introduce probiotics, which add good bacteria to our gut community. Life-Space Probiotics Plus Sleep Support contains 2 strains of beneficial bacteria, plus ashwagandha and lemon balm, supporting a healthy microbiome and improving overall sleep quality. Life-Space Probiotics Plus Stress Relief also contains 2 strains of beneficial bacteria, as well as magnesium and vitamin B6. While saffron helps to relieve symptoms of stress and nervous tension associated with mild anxiety. There's more knowledge and understanding than ever before when it comes to supporting our mental well-being. Now it's just up to us to take the time to prioritise it.
Olympic swimmer Gianne Rooney there on supporting good gut health. I look after myself as best I can, but I have to say I would never get to Olympic level health, certainly not swimming, that's for sure. So, Dr. Nick, there are so many different diets and exercise regimes and fads and unrealistic Instagram pictures out there. I just get lost and exhausted, yet I can't stop scrolling. Help me.
Well, I have a solution to that, Joe. I don't have Instagram. Ever thought of trying that one?
I should try that. What about health fads, though?
Well, they come and go, but the basic, sensible guidelines, they just don't change, and they exist for a reason. A healthy, varied diet, enough sleep, check in on your mental health, and move every day, easy.
It's so annoyingly rational. As a GP, though, what is the most bizarre health fad or home remedy you've come across?
Well, I have to say most things that are found online, Joe, because Dr. Google does not have a degree.
But how am I going to know that this very minor ailment is going to kill me or not?
You could just go and see a GP and trust them.
All right, well, Hines is on a quest to discover everything that's weird, wonderful and what works in the health field. And this week he's hardwired himself into a fitness technique that promises to electrify your workout.
It's not until you really get into exercise, and I mean moving every couple of days, that finally gets the endorphins, the neurotransmitters and hormones pumping through the body so that you feel great. Sure, you might pull up a little bit sore, but you're proud because you've achieved something and that stress seems to melt away and you feel energised. But as human beings, we seem to want the results without the hard work, which is why I'm keen to try a new high voltage trend that promises to give people the workout and the results in half the time. Byron, you've supplied me with quite the outfit. Run me through why.
So basically, this is designed to retain water. So the water is for the conductivity for these guys to do the work.
Okay, and what's the... Hang on. This retains water, but that's already wet.
So we're going to be adding a lot more water so that the muscles can get stimulated through those electrodes.
So that electricity is more intense.
The wetter, the better.
I feel like I understand sort of how it works, but what about on a deeper level? Talk to me about the science behind it.
So with our daily activity and daily movements, we're working with our central nervous system. So the technology now allows us to bypass that system and stimulate your muscles at a maximum potential. So we usually contract up to about 40% of our muscles potential, but now the device is allowing us to tap into 90% activation.
Is it the type of thing that's okay one-off, or do you want to do it more regularly?
Definitely regular training. It's as if you're doing conventional strength training. You want to do at least 1 session per week, maybe sometimes 2 sessions per week.
When we think about yoga, for example, a gentle flow, we might not be sweating and our heart rate might not go through the roof, compared to, say, strength training or HIIT training, where your blood is pumping and you're getting a sweat. Where does 20V fall within that range?
That's quite an interesting question, because with the type of training and the training style, it's not high intensity, it's not jarring, so your heart rate is always at a nice regulated level. It's the muscles that are getting all the workouts. So look, we're going to grab onto these.
Yep.
Those are basically going to help you contract the muscles in the hands. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a brace position while we're warming up as well.
Okay.
So we're going to jump into a brace position with your feet shoulder width apart.
Yep. Now tell me, be honest, now we're talking 20 volts.
That's right.
Does it hurt?
It is an experience, but we want to work out of your comfort zone as well, as with any type of strength training.
And you've said no hurt.
Slight discomfort.
Tingle?
A little bit more.
Tickle?
Wait a minute, yo.
Yay. Oh, what is that?
Try to squeeze a little tighter. That's it. Don't forget to breathe. Breathe it out. That's it. There we go.
Whoa.
And then relax.
Yay! It's not what I imagined. Oh my God. Some people spend so much time slogging away. How is this any different?
So the science shows us that 20 minutes of 20V training session is equivalent to 4 hours in the gym of conventional weight training. So it's intense on the muscles. So what's happening is your muscles are working against each other and getting them to involuntarily contract. So we don't need any resistance from weight. We're using an impulse to stimulate those muscles.
I'm going to look so pumped after this.
So open up nice and wide, get full range of motion, breathe out, and push. There we go.
When we think of exercise, often we can refer to DOMS, delayed offset muscle soreness. Are people sore after the 20 volt?
All I can say is I'm looking forward to chatting to you in the next 2 days, because there's definitely an experience of DOMS after this training. Now squeeze your tummy as tight as you possibly can, and we are done.
Thank you so much, Byron.
That was amazing.
That was awesome. I got to be honest, getting suited up and hearing about it, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but the minute that those electrodes turned on, my entire body, and I'm not just talking where the pads are, it felt like my entire body was switched on and engaged. So let me tell you this, I am saturated under here. My heart is racing. I feel a really good sweat, and the time flew by. So if you're someone who thinks, you know what, I don't have hours to spend in the gym, but I want to get really good results, I'm now converted. I will be back. I loved it. I loved it. It's also something sick about me because I really enjoyed the zapping. Have I got a challenge for you, Sarah? I want you to name as many great things as you can, starting with B.
Ooh, bubble bath, beach, bikini. You go.
All right, I'm going to go with the B vitamins. These water-soluble nutrients perform important functions, particularly when it comes to stress and energy levels.
Energy and stress, of course, go hand in hand because prolonged stress may cause physical or mental fatigue, which then increases stress. It's a bit of a dangerous cycle that you don't want to fall into.
So let's break it. Vitamins B1 and B12 are involved in turning glucose into energy, and it's vitamins B2, B3 and B5 that support energy production inside each cell.
Vitamin B5 is also a great support in the stress space, assisting our body to cope with environmental stress, promoting a healthy response.
And vitamin B6 plays a role in supporting healthy emotional balance. Now, I know what you're thinking.
That I have no emotional balance? No, that I'm going to be stressed and have no energy just finding these B vitamins?
Yes, but don't worry. A healthy, balanced diet can give us all of the B vitamins we need, plus we can turn to supplement form.
Heinzie, you are the B for best.
Well, I was just going to say I am looking beautiful today.
Oh, me? Why, thank you.
Actually, the mirror behind you. Oh, hello, handsome.
The A to Z of vitamins is brought to you by Go Healthy's Pro Activated B Complex, a convenient, high-strength one-a-day formulation to support healthy stress response in the body.
Luke and Sarah, they're giving us some insight into the energising power of the B vitamins. Now, summer for me, Joe, always feel like I've got more energy. You want to get out and exercise more and be healthier. It's a lot easier in summer for me.
Oh, absolutely. I love the salads that come with summer, the lighter food, I think, plus longer days and fine weather makes one of my favourite things even better, and that's running. I'm always looking for new things to inspire me as I jog along the water. For me, it's always about music. Love my tunes.
Running, Joe, has experienced a few fashion revolutions over the past few years, and I think a lot of people rediscovered it during lockdown because it was really the only chance to get outdoors.
Yeah, and once we were allowed back outside, the big trend talked about for 2022 was reverse running. I love it. It is what it says, where you run backwards. That's it. Go figure.
Well, the theory is it burns more calories, improves your posture and is kinder on the knees. But I have to say, I haven't seen too many people in the streets out there running backwards, Joe, so I'm not sure that one ever really took off.
I don't think it would work for me at all, Dus. But one woman who's on a mission to inspire everyone to run whichever way they like is Turia Pitt, the sought-after motivational speaker, Iron Woman and mum of two, wants everyone to fall into step with the joy of running.
Well, as a kid, I always liked exercise and being active. I was always outdoors and bushwalking and surfing. I felt like running was also good for my mental health because when you feel like crap or you just feel a bit bleh, you know, you go for a run, you get those endorphins, you feel good about yourself. And for me, if I'm moving my body and being active, that helps me to feel more confident, stronger, better about who I am. 10 years ago, I was working as an engineer in the Kimberley region of Australia. I entered an ultra marathon. I was trapped by a fire about a quarter of the way through the race. I received burns to 65% of my body, got evacuated hours later, woke up in hospital, spent years in and out of hospital. And I guess that's the low lights of my story. And what I'm really proud of is how I managed to rebuild my body and my life. It was actually really hard to return back to exercise after being burnt because I was stiff, my joints were stiff, didn't have the flexibility and the range of motion. I felt really self-conscious. I was in my black compression mask. And I think I stuck at it because I realised that exercise was something that was a big role in my life. And so really I just broke down the steps that I needed to do and took my journey one day at a time or one step at a time. And I think being a runner and having that mindset that I can do hard things, when things get tough, I keep going. I think learning all of those things, and that was what I learned from running, obviously really helped me after the fire and in my recovery as well. So as a runner, supporting my muscle health obviously is really important. That's why I'm stoked to be working with Kind. Kind Magnesium Bio helps to reduce and relieve muscle cramps. It's formulated using scientific evidence. Well, our bodies are designed to move, you know? Everyone works, we've got really busy lives, a lot of us work at a computer. And I'm not saying go out and run a marathon. I think if you're new to exercise, the advice I would give would be like just start small, showing up to your training sessions and just doing those small, consistent steps.
We started today's show with a game-changing heart device, and let's finish it with news of a push by Queensland livestock farmers to tackle global warming. Over to you with this one, Jack.
OK, Das. So this is all about reducing methane emissions in cows, would you believe?
OK, so I have a feeling this is around the fact that cows fart a lot. Is that what is that what it is?
Yes, we cover all the important issues on this show. It is true. A livestock technology company in Toowoomba is developing a revolutionary system that will put methane-reducing additives into cattle's drinking water. If it works, it'll help lower cows' methane emissions. Isn't that crazy?
Well, I do have to do a little bit of fact-checking, which is one of my jobs on this show.
You're obsessed with facts, aren't you?
I certainly am, because while methane is indeed a greenhouse gas, most of it produced by the cows is actually burping, not farting.
OK.
And it is odourless and colourless. But it is a normal part of a cow's digestive process, and it's estimated that livestock emissions account for 11% of Australia's greenhouse gases. And that's a huge amount of hot air.
What is a methane-reducing additive? Can I ask you that question without notice, Nick?
I think they use some form of seaweed, which they mush up, but there's a real problem getting enough of it. But I think that's where the technology is beginning.
Yes, yes. And then to roll the giant sushi that goes in for the cow, that's really hard as well. Look, I love a steak, but I do feel guilty eating one sometimes because of its impact on the environment. And I don't want the livestock industry and our farmers to lose their livelihoods either. So I love that we are finding a way for livestock industry to be sustainable, which means I can have my cheese and milk and be happy. That's all good, isn't it?
It is, and even better, we spoke earlier of the rise of females in STEM. Well, the methane-busting cattle project is being led by a woman. Toowoomba researcher Vivian McCollum, who's been nominated for a Rural Women's Shine Award for her work.
Well, that is a great story, Jack. Vivian doing her bit, evening out those numbers for women in science, Jack, which we absolutely love. That's our show for today. To Joe, Dr Nick Carr, Jackie, it's been great as always.
I'll be on the airwaves for the House of Wellness radio show with Gerald Quigley this Sunday.
Check out the House of Wellness website for more great content.
And thanks as always to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. We'll see you again soon.